All right, well, welcome to Deep Dive Week
5?
5? I don't know.
We're moving in.
It's getting up there, so I can't even keep track anymore. But yeah, Week 5, Deep Dive, looking at Jesus turning water into wine at a
This is a pretty significant moment for Jesus. Yeah,
and for Baptists.
Well, celebration.
Yes. Anyway, so John chapter 2, verses 1 through 12 is the text that we're going to be in. Man, we're flying here, right? We're still very early in Jesus's ministry. We've kind of, this is the last of that like preparation sub-series.
Yes, that's right. He's kind of coming. And I think, talked about this weekend, that it really begins at the end of chapter 1. Mm-hmm. Because there's this fascinating calling of Nathanael, who to be a follower. He's not named as an official disciple. Mm-hmm. That comes a bit later. But Jesus, since the temptation, he's moved from south of Jerusalem up north and is gathering followers together and has this remarkable encounter with Nathanael and invites him to come and, kind of said, hey, you're going to see greater things. These amazing things are going to happen. And I'm sure Nathanael's like, I'm all in. Where are we going? And he's like, a wedding in your hometown. So they go to Cana to this wedding, which is in Nathanael's hometown, a very small place. Mm-hmm. But I do think it's fascinating. I think John obviously wants us to know in Jesus that here is Nathanael called to be a follower, and where does he see Jesus for who he is? But right in his hometown, with probably some of his friends.
Yeah, this is a great... the last few weeks, right, we've been in Matthew a lot.
Yes,
looked at Mark, and all of the gospel writers, they kind of have their own intentions, purposes, right? Matthew, he's writing to Israel. He's trying to show, hey, Jesus is the Messiah. He is the King. He fulfills Old Testament. Mark, he just wants to get right into the action, right? Writing for probably a Roman audience. And then his kind of focus is Jesus as servant. And then you have Luke, who's just trying to create this very historical account for his... for Theophilus, right, for the Greeks. And so then you have John, though, who's writing for the whole world, right? And he wants us to know that Jesus is God.
Is really who he is. Yes, that's right. That's right. And I think, he's the one who starts in John 1 talking about Jesus as being part of the creator and speaking. And so what is the first miracle? But it's creation. Yeah. He's taking water and evolving through a creation process to become wine. And so I do think that's part of what this miracle does is goes back to creation, and Jesus is now the creator. It's a new beginning. Yeah.
So we're in John chapter 2, and this is the only gospel that has this particular miracle, sign, event that Jesus is at. So let's just jump in.
I love this. I love this.
It is. Yeah, it is. Right. So John chapter 2, on the third day, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. So
was invited.
Was invited.
Invited.
I've got the ESV.
They're invited. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They are part of this. Third day.
Yes.
We see that. What's
so? Well, there are two schools of thought on there. Is John just very detailed? Because you see, it kind of in chapter 1, is he very detailed about the days? Is this third day after Nathanael? They're kind of traveling. Most commentators would say the third day refers to the third day of the week. Mm-hmm. So that the numbers on the first, second day
off of creation.
Was modeled off of creation.
You don't have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Yeah.
No, you have first, second, third day. The Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they're Greek Roman gods' names that are added. So that Wednesday was a common day for weddings to occur because it was on the day that God created multiple things and blessed them twice. Mm-hmm. And so that is separated the land, created, vegetate. He said, this is very good. Mm. And so for a husband and a wife, there's a double blessing on that third day. And so that was the day, particularly if you were single, never married, often culturally, if you were widowed, you would be married on the fourth day.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
There you go.
There you go. So wedding customs different than our own. You have this much longer festival, feast, celebration. A lot of people were invited. Here we we have to really manage our wedding invite
It's
list.
so different. Yes. Yeah. I'm so glad. I mean, I think, man, this must cost a fortune.
Yeah.
But the whole process.
Yeah, you've got 3 daughters. How would
I would like, actually, in that culture, the grooms, they paid for everything. And so you get a whole different sense. You get the betrothal, which you see in the beginning of the Gospels with Mary and Joseph, but that they would take almost like a contract, the ketubah, and they would write kind of this proposal, this covenant together. Mm-hmm. And then the groom, the groom to be, would go back and build a home.
Yeah.
To bring the bride to. Often it was connected to the parents' home, and they kind of add a room, which is where Jesus, when he's in the upper room before he goes to heaven, he says, "I'm going to prepare a room for you." Him as the bridegroom is preparing a place for us and coming back and getting the bride. And the bride is waiting. The bride never quite knows when the wedding is going to be, but kind of has an idea of the general time.
Yeah.
So, and then when the groom is ready, he goes, and there's this marriage procession, and it's a big deal. The actual ceremony is pretty short. Mm-hmm. The couple have their wedding night, they consummate the marriage, and then there's this week-long celebration.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I mean, we were talking in Teach Day, life is so hard and grinding. I mean, people would look forward to that. When people work, sometimes I don't know. I mean, I don't have a sense, did they party all day and all night? Was this like one spring break, like to the extreme, or did they, do some things, but during the evening they come back in the wedding celebration?
Yeah.
I don't know, but there was this ongoing celebration of close friends with the wedding. We see it also in Samson. That's one of the Old Testament allusions with Samson and his first marriage, and that it's a week-long celebration. And obviously it was important for the bridegroom to be the host, and it was the public display that they could take care of the bride.
Yeah.
And so providing for all these people was so significant because it was your whole identity. And so to run out of wine, that's a shame. I mean, that's the ultimate shame. And there is some writings that the bride's family could actually sue you for running out, not providing.
Wow.
Yeah, take you to court over that. So, I mean, it's a big deal. We don't think of it, but it's an ultimate shame for you.
Well, and I'm fascinated because like the imagery of a wedding shows up throughout Scripture.
Yes.
You talk about the bridegroom, like in the relationship of God and Israel and His people, and you see Paul writing in Ephesians 5, using it to describe Christ and the church and their relationship. In Revelation, you have this wedding, right? And so I've got to think that John is even when he's writing this, he's intentionally connecting something.
The whole thing, because even Jesus, I'm going to prepare a place, and then that. The continual theme, you're right, and it's the bridegroom, that's the focus here, and I think ultimately Jesus is the bridegroom and is showing that He can provide, who He is. I think there's so many layers and levels in this story of understanding and knowing Jesus in a number of different ways.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, in verse 2, Jesus also was invited to the wedding with His disciples, so His followers got to join the party too.
How many, we don't know. Like, again, it's uncertain actually how many. We know of at least 4 or 5 that show up in early John, but he doesn't name the 12 until a bit later. We'll get to that.
Yeah. And then it says, when the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." Right? They have no wine. What? I don't want to jump too far yet. Yeah. But why his mother? Like,
well, why
is she concerned about this?
Yes, there's so many different. Understand, and no one knows. I mean, I think there's some arguments for silence. I mean, there's some commentators that would suggest it was the disciples that were like extra guests that nobody knew were coming.
Jesus' disciples.
So they drank all the wine, so that they did that and didn't know that. So the question is, why was the bridegroom and the host unprepared? Did people miscalculate? Did more people show up? Did they drink more than what they expect? I mean, I think what's in the connection, it doesn't matter. Jesus knew this was going to happen. I mean, the end of chapter 1 is Jesus telling Nathanael, "I saw you under the fig tree before your brother even talked with you." And that just overwhelms Nathanael. And so, I mean, obviously Jesus knew, so he's going. and you get the sense he's going to do something. So why Mary? Some early commentators thought perhaps it's a nephew or a family member. Then probably given the fact that Jesus and his mother are there probably was kind of a close family connection. I mean, I think it's more than just Mary's the nosy one and kind of knows what's
She's in
going
everybody's
on.
business. Yeah.
But there's something. I mean, there is even some commentators, and I don't think this is true, but some commentators suggest it might have been a brother of Jesus, that it could have been another child, one of Mary's other children who are getting married, and so she is heavily invested in that. I don't think that's the case. Probably it was more cousin, a close relative, family relative who was there, and Mary goes to Jesus, I think, because Joseph's not there. Who does she go to?
Yeah, because we don't see him anymore.
We don't see him
anymore. The assumption is that he's already passed away.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So that she, he is the eldest, is the one, somewhat responsible. He's the one to deal with it. And I think that's, his obvious answer, kind of shows the interesting aspects of their relationship.
Well, and she comes to him because she knows that he can do something about it. Is my assumption.
Yeah.
I mean, why unless she's just shooting the breeze, hey, they ran out of wine, and at this point though, Jesus, his identity, he's had conversations with a couple of the disciples, a couple people who are following him or that he's called, but even then we see the disciples throughout the Gospels, they're constantly trying to figure it out. They think they got it and they don't. So the identity of Jesus is still fairly subtle. Nobody knows it.
He's the teacher. I mean, I think that's what attracts them at this point. What's obviously attractive is his teaching. I mean, the first, obviously his insight with Nathanael seeing him under the fig tree. So there's something more. But this is really, it is the first miracle that he does.
And we see throughout John, especially, the other Gospels, they'll show these big public miracles that he does. And John is a little more subtle.
Right.
It's a lot of these just maybe private encounters, conversations, even this that Jesus does. It's still, it's amazing, but there's a subtlety to it.
Right. And he calls them signs.
Yeah.
He talks about the 7 signs that are in John. So he alludes to 7 of these miracles. And he doesn't call them miracles, he calls them signs, which are markers, identifiers. They're meant to show us something deeper about Jesus and who he is.
That's good. I wanted to ask, wine. I was reading, in some of the study notes, and wine, at least in the Old Testament, has some symbolic connection to joy, to spiritual fullness, to God's provision.
There's a picture of the kingdom of God and the celebration that's there. I think even one of the Old Testament prophets, let me just look that up.
Yeah.
Amos chapter 9, talking about the rebuild in the end of chapter 9 and verse 12, 13. They will rebuild the ruined cities, live in them. They'll plant vineyards and drink their wine. They'll make gardens and eat of their fruit. I'm going to plant Israel in their own land and never be uprooted. There are a number of different pictures of the kingdom of God as a party, as a celebration. In Jesus, the Gospels are full of that.
Yeah.
But that there is, as part of that, this free-flowing sense of wine and celebration. And then, of course, the symbol of Jesus' blood, it's the wine and the bread, the symbol of his blood and sacrifice.
Yeah. And I think with this particular sign, we see, we see Jesus's power over the material world. We see kind of that parallel of creation.
Right.
And wine, even, we see him kind of take that as an image later with communion, and kind of the same thing there.
Right. And he talks later, the parable of the new wine. He talks about new wine, old wineskins, kind of new ways. And I think that, again, this is a picture of that. And it does go back. It's, that Jesus, as the creator, he creates wine, which has a lot of finishing process. It's a long process. So something that's never existed and comes into existence immediately. It's interesting, getting a little farther ahead, but it's 6 jars. Why 6?
Yeah.
6 is the number of imperfection. It's the number of humans. It's also 6 days of creation. And so it's almost this recreating event. And so I do think even in the signs that John talks about, the 7 signs, there is the gospel story, because the first sign is, a kind of sense of creation, making something out of nothing. The last sign he talks about is the raising of Lazarus from the dead. It's resurrection. From creation to resurrection, the new kingdom. So I think even in the signs, John is looking, hey, here's the gospel story that's there.
So good. And he opens the book of John, right, opens with Jesus as this pre-existent, the Logos, the Word,
Creator.
So rich.
He does that.
Well, verse 4, Jesus said to her, "Woman," how all of our mothers would love to be addressed, I'm sure.
Yeah, don't memorize. This shouldn't be the verse you memorize and use a lot.
"Woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come."
Yeah. So I think it's an unusual calling. He doesn't say mom. He uses woman. He does use it again at the cross when he talks about, when this is your son. So there are 2 schools of thought. Is this, kind of an abrupt,
Is he trying to distance or?
Yeah, I don't think it's derogatory. She doesn't take it as derogatory. I do think there is a sense of Jesus is the dutiful son. That's what we read, that he was all about, after the incident in the temple, if you remember, it says he obeyed them.
Yeah.
So there is, I think, a distancing even more here. It's like, okay, Mom, I'm now about my Father's business, really, was doing that. So although he listens to her, and obviously he's taking something, again, I think he knew that this was going to be here.
And she obviously, he responds, and she's like, okay, hey, go and he's going to do this. He's going to take care of it.
He has no doubt. And that's where, do whatever he says. And it's interesting, was she just thinking, oh, maybe he's got some money to buy wine? And most commentators say that one of the challenges, it's not like Cana was out in the middle of nowhere, 50 or 60 people. To travel to Capernaum, maybe even Nazareth, and get wine, it would take too long to go by foot, to get there, to bring it back. The party's over.
Yeah, this isn't out at the vineyards in Augusta.
Right. Where you can just go down to the basement or you probably couldn't even go to the neighbors necessarily and get enough. So he does that. And I do think it's interesting. She says, she doesn't even speak to, you get the sense that she leaves, but she says to the servants, just obey him. Which is what, I think it goes back to the Gospels where she is told by the angel she's going to have a son. And what does she say? I'm your servant.
Yeah.
Lord, be it unto me. I'm your servant. And again, we see the king of the kingdom of overflowing wine. And we're invited in to the miracles. And the best way to experience it is just say, hey, I'm your servant.
Yeah. No, that's so good. In his response to her, he talks about his hour.
Yeah.
What's going on with that?
Well, I think, it's the question. I think she's pushing a little bit. Obviously she knows something. This is the first public miracle. It's the first recorded miracle. Has he done any other miracles? We don't know.
Yeah.
What unusual things had he done? I do think there's a picture of salvation and rescue in this story, and I think that's where it is a picture of the gospel, the shame, which we don't quite understand, but the host goes from shame, potential shame, to glory. And that's really what Jesus did on the cross, is that he takes our shame, he takes our place. We get glory and honor because we are his kids without going through. So I think the hour, Jesus uses the hour periodically talking about, the cross and the resurrection, the salvation event. And I think he's saying, hey, this is, that hour has not yet come.
Yeah. No, that's so good. There's an awareness. This is one of the things I love about Jesus. He is so highly intentional with everything he does. And there's an awareness of the work that the Father has for him to do, and he understands when and where and how and all of that through here. And we're all just trying to figure it out.
We're all trying to do that, yeah.
All right, well, so verse 6. Now there were 6 stone water jars there for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. So the water alone
Would 200 or 300 pounds
would have been
alone.
heavy.
Right.
Stone jars.
These were not meant to be movable. These were not movable jars.
Yeah.
These are not, which is why they had to go get water and fill them up. And so, they had been there. We talked about that with baptism, the purification. On a wedding day, wedding celebration, the bride and groom, there was purification rituals and baths and preparation. So they would be used for that, potentially used to wash, the guests, the hands and feet of the guests who were there. So were they empty? We don't know. Did they fill them up? Was there kind of already pre-used water in there? I don't know. But they would come and they would bring water, and it says they filled them right to the brim. Yeah, no room.
And then it doesn't say anything about how Jesus turns it into water.
No.
Or into wine. It is.
They obeyed. And again, they filled it up. That's obedience. That's one thing. That's an easy obedience. And then he says, draw it out and give it. And it's like, that's the harder one. Like to take that moment. And don't you wish you were like, what's that moment? It's the same of, when the feeding of the 5,000 dipping your hands into the basket and there's more.
Yeah.
What's that moment of seeing?
Yeah, like what's the expectation, the anticipation? Like it's probably like, okay.
Yeah.
No, that's good.
Yeah. I love, it says nearby were these. And how many times is our miracle nearby? How many times is God nearby? How many times is what we need, like right nearby? And we don't, we look around and we flail around and it's God's work is right there.
Yeah. And I do wonder, when Mary goes to her son and says, hey, they're out of wine, what was she expecting him to do, right? Probably not this.
Probably not.
Or at least not in this way.
Yeah.
We obviously, we won't know.
We don't know.
We have no idea. I do wonder, because this is where we're going to leave Mary here in a little bit, but John, so when Jesus was on the cross, he looks at John and he gives him this aside, hey, look after my mother. And I do wonder if, when John was getting ready to write this, his gospel, his book, if this makes it in because of Mary.
Yeah, I think it does. I think he's seen there. I'm sure that he harkens back to both.
Yeah.
We were talking about that in our teaching team. And, did John go, oh, this is the hour? Right, this is the hour. And I love how Chris is putting it when we were talking. It's like the guest drank of the grace of the vine in Cana. We get to drink of the grace of the cross because of Calvary. And, it's grace. It's the same thing. And, did John put those two together? And think of, that's the 2 times he used woman. Did you think of, I'm sure John did.
Yeah. Well, let's jump ahead. Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water. They filled them to the brim. He said to them, now draw some out, take it to the master of the feast. Yeah,
which, that's the weirdo bit. Filling is nothing, but, okay, we're going to take some dirty water and give it to the master.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and so they did. And when the master of the feast tasted the water, now he doesn't even necessarily know that they're out of wine. Like, maybe
he may not. Yeah, I don't know. The master, he's not there. He's probably, kind of like the caterer or whatever. He may. Yeah, he doesn't. He seems more surprised that
he doesn't know where it came from.
Yeah, he doesn't know where it came from. He's assuming, there's extra wine. And typically, what you would do is as people partied a little longer in the week, you'd save the worst wine to when they couldn't feel its effects as much. So this was a flip on that. This is unbelievable that you'd save the best.
Yeah. He even says that. He goes to the bridegroom. Everyone serves good wine first, and when people have drunk freely, then the poor wine. But you have kept the good wine until now. And I think that's what God does. He saves the best, right?
Yeah.
He provides, and when he provides the best.
Yeah, and in abundance. I mean, somewhere between 150, 200 gallons of wine. That's 2,000 to 2,500 glasses of wine. I mean, this is an overabundance that
Yeah.
he gives to us, which is amazing.
Yeah. Well, we only have a couple minutes left, but in verse 11, right, we see, we've already talked about this a little bit, that, this is the first of his signs. And that it manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Like, that's kind of the first time we see that phrase.
Right. Right. Well, I think, obviously they were captivated by his teaching, by his, probably understanding of life, how he taught, what he lived, what he challenged people to do. This is now, okay, they're beginning to see him differently. He is not a teacher. He is something more. So they're beginning to see the glory of who he is. Again, I'm not sure they totally even understood. It seems to be an evolving process. But I think they're seeing, okay, this is who he is. This is what the signs mean, that they're pointing to deeper things about Jesus and pointing to who he really is, and seeing him maybe more as a creator, as someone who really is from God, who is more of a miracle worker than what they knew. I mean, it wasn't until later Peter says, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." But they certainly knew he was from God. God had sent him. And we have to remember this, it's 400 plus years or more before there was a miracle, since a miracle has happened, then in this way on the planet that people saw. And again, we don't even know who witnessed it. Obviously, it was the disciples knew, it was the servants who knew. We don't even know that
the rest of the party.
That the rest of the party even knew that.
Yeah.
Certainly it doesn't. The master doesn't go, "Oh wow, look, to the bridegroom, Jesus made some wine, like he got spared."
Yeah. Yeah. It is funny, right? How God, we've seen that in these weeks, right? How God prepares Jesus not out in the public, but kind of in the quiet, or he takes him to the desert, or Jesus when he was a young boy, right? There's these question and answer kind of things happening, and even this first sign, this first miracle that is recorded, it's not even widely known. And it seems like Jesus, he cares about the people that he is in close relationship and proximity to. Right? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. And we're all invited. Like, that's what Nathaniel gets an invitation to see that.
Yeah.
Jesus invites him to come and follow, and then he gets an invitation to a wedding and sees that. And I think we follow the invitation to follow Jesus. And, how many times is he doing things around us that we don't even know until later, or may not ever know? And I think that's, sometimes we say, well, where is God? I don't see him working. Most of the guests may never have seen that miracle.
But they would have seen the effects.
They saw the effects of it, and the joy of it, and the kingdom.
Yeah.
And that this is what Jesus invites us to, this kind of never-ending celebration and party. That's the kingdom of God. And people, no, I don't want to become that. It's all about shame, doom, gloom, sin. No, it's a
celebration. The first thing he does is a party.
It's a party. Saves the party.
That's great.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick, you want to tease us next week? What's happening?
Well, he's now, he's gaining in momentum in his ministry, and he heads to Jerusalem and makes a name for himself, and creates quite a stir as he goes into the temple. This is the first Passover. These are markers of his ministry. And then someone comes knocking at night. Try to find out more.
That's great. Awesome. Well, hey, thank you for joining us. Hopefully this is something that you have found to be helpful for you as we are just kind of journeying to know Jesus better, know him more. You can find more resources on our website, calvary.church/knowingjesus. You can go back and watch previous week's deep dives and some other stuff as well. We'll catch you next week.